Hello and welcome to Alive and Composing the Wonderful World of Innova with today's guest, Gordon Beeferman. Would you please state your name for the record?
Gordon Beeferman.
And where does that name come from? Is it a variety of gin?
Actually, I don't know. Gordon was my great grandmother's last name, and she was from, I think, Lithuania, somewhere Latvia. I can't remember, but apparently, because Jews didn't have last names, like when they took names, they would be, Schneider would be, someone who like cuts things, or but so Gordon comes from the Russian word for town or city. So, and Beeferman, I honestly don't know where it comes from.
It comes from you.
I couldn't have made it up myself.
Oh.
Reality is stranger than, yeah.
We are doing a survey of composers and their household pets. Do you have any, and what are their interesting names?
My cats, there are two cats, and I have shared custody of them with my boyfriend who lives in Brooklyn. And the cats are named Lulu and Esther. And Lulu was named after the opera.
Okay, is it going to have a tragic end at some point?
No.
Good. And Esther, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Handel opera, but I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I think there's an opera named Esther, but that wasn't the origin of that particular name. So,
thinking of origins, what's your first sound memory?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. First sound memory. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I remember my first experiences making music, but I don't know that I remember sounds specifically. It's a really
let's go with music then.
I took oh, now I can't remember what it's called. What's it called when kids, you clap and do dance? It's not Delcros. What? No, not Delcros. What's it called?
Eurythmics?
Eurythmics. That's right. I took Eurythmics when I was a kid, and we, clapped and danced, and then I started playing piano. I was about 4, and I as a young kid, I used to make up songs and sing them and record them straight into the tape recorder. So there are these tapes of me improvising, basically, when I was a kid, and I would say, this is the first song, and I'd give the title, and I would just sing it from beginning to end, and yeah.
And that's another thing you have in common with Meredith Monk, I believe, study of eurythmics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And do you see that carrying through in your interest of kind of physicality? I'm trying to make connections that maybe aren't obvious, but maybe are.
I think that does make sense. I've always been interested in dance, and I'm not a good dancer or a trained dancer, but I did take dance classes and do dance performances when I was a kid. I was very into musical theater. And even now, for years I've worked with choreographers, and I've done a lot of improvisation with dancers, and I enjoy, making connections between music and dance. But for me, music is very movement based, and whether it's like groovy dancing, like you just want to shake your booty, or if it's something more esoteric and wonderful. But yes, music and dance.
What might you have been if you weren't a musician or composer?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think about that every day when I'm trying to find a job. But I have many interests in, reading, writing. I like to write. I used to write poetry and stories. I'm interested in politics and history, and I'm interested in activism, and I do like people, even though I stay at home a lot by myself and write music. But I think if I weren't a musician, maybe I would do something that was more that was maybe less solitary than making music.
What are you trying to achieve through your music? Do you think that some of the politics and the activism and the other things you're interested in life are part of the purpose of why you put music in the world?
I think so. I think music is, I don't think music is necessarily inherently political. I think politics and music can sometimes go together, but in general, music is just music. Music is maybe more social, I think, than political. But music definitely has an effect on you. And I think that obviously different types of music have a different type of effect on you. So I think some music makes you feel good, makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel that everything's great, or it confirms what you already have experienced in music, and it it makes you feel secure. Or and some music doesn't do that. It can make you feel very uncomfortable, or it can take you out of your normal experience. It can, through feeling uncomfortable, it can bring you into a new type of experience or state of awareness that is not what you're used to. And I think the experience of doing something out of the ordinary, or feeling out of the ordinary, is very important. And I think that is maybe the only aspect of music that can have some kind of relationship to politics, as we have to, in order to change anything about the world and make it better, we have to do things that make us very uncomfortable or change things. And I think music is very good at doing that, and I feel like maybe that's part of what my job is to, and part of what I enjoy doing as a composer is to play with those things about, the things that we know and that we expect and that we already understand and like, and but pushing those into a territory that is maybe a little more uncomfortable or a little more out of the ordinary, is maybe a little more playful. I think playfulness can also go with discomfort. Maybe that's one way into doing things differently, is to have that sense of playfulness.
Was there a moment growing up that you experienced a work of art that just totally blew you away? It could be a performance, a poem, just something that you said, that's really powerful, I can't do anything else with my life.
That's a really good question. I mean, there are so many pieces that have had so many recordings and different types of music that have had a big effect on me. I mean, some of the early things that I from my teenage years, which is I think when I really knew that I was going to spend my time doing music. Some of the music that really influenced me was Charles Ives. I remember the Fourth Symphony, which I think I was maybe 13 or 14 when I listened to that. I was very influenced by the music of Carl Bley, the composer, pianist, organist, jazz hero. Bartok, I was very influenced by from a young age. And I don't know, there's so many different pieces of music. And I think, over time, there have been other pieces that have really influenced me, like Berg's Lulu was always a very big influence on me. And I probably could go through my shelves and say, oh my God, this and this and this. But in my own mind, I don't necessarily refer to those. Like I don't think about them like as if they were the thing that made me want to do what I'm doing. But I think it just gradually dawned on me that this was what I really felt like I wanted to do.
It still makes sense that your wide interests then are reflected in your wide variety of outputs now. I think of you as a pianist, an improviser, a composer of very tightly constructed pieces as well. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't like to compartmentalize, like in I think in all aspects of my life. I like to think that I'm artistically promiscuous. I think that I don't like to, people always talk about, boundaries of genre and but I don't think about, it's not just boundaries of genre that I'm not so concerned about. It's boundaries of how are we making music? Am I playing it? Am I improvising it? Am I composing it? Who am I working with? Am I collaborating with other types of artists? Am I working by myself? Am I working with other musicians? And where am I doing it? Am I doing it at home? Am I doing it on a very big stage, or in a dumpy hole in the wall somewhere in New York? Or, I think the experience of making music is the main thing, and the exact manner in which I do it is less important. It's that is a source of creativity to me. What are some different ways I can make music? How can I expand who I am and what my life experience is through different ways of making music?
Do you think that also relates to New York City itself, your home? Were you born here?
No, I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Okay, because there's something quintessentially New York about all the fingers you have in every little pie here.
I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons I was attracted to coming to New York, because I felt like those things could all happen here. And there's, there's Broadway, there's Broadway, there's experimental theater, there's dance, there's all kinds of, maybe everything except for Hollywood, it's not happening here. But I grew up, I mail ordered the Village Voice when I was a teenager, and I read it, pretty religiously every week. And I just had an instinct that New York was a place where I could, meet all kinds of interesting people. And I love just getting into new scenes and like discovering a new scene of people doing this, or, oh, these people are doing these house concerts here, and I can't possibly get involved in everything or go everywhere or do everything, but it's nice to I don't want to necessarily feel limited by, oh, well, I only do this. To me, that's just not fun.
You've got this extraordinary album out on Innova called 4 Parts 5. Where does that fit into your output?
4 Parts 5 is something different than what I've been doing recently, in recent years, and I'm really excited about it for that reason. I have a background in both jazz and classical music, doing improvised and composed music, performing, as an interpreter, as an improviser, and for a long time I sort of kept those separate because I felt like I didn't, because what I wanted to do didn't fit. The ways I wanted to integrate those two things didn't really fit into either of those areas. So I was like, okay, well, I'll study jazz here, and then I'll do this, and I'll keep them separate. And then once I started to bring them together, I realized that was like kind of twice as exciting, which is like what I said, I don't like to compartmentalize, and 4 Parts 5 is not an improvised piece at all. It's actually like extremely detailed in the way it's written, but I don't want to say it's jazzy because that's not a very descriptive adjective, but it uses a lot of the vocabulary, rhythmically speaking, that I use, that I might use in jazz related stuff that I do, and it also has the same kind of instrumentation that a more jazz-like group would have. It's a woodwind, piano and organ, electric guitar, bass and drums, and the main thing about this piece that's really different than what I've done before is that it's extremely repetitive, or I shouldn't say that it's repetitive, but it deals with repetition. It questions repetition. It plays with repetition in these ways that I've been talking about, like playing with expectations about how things will repeat. Because in the past, I've written a lot of music that was very consciously or unconsciously not repetitive. Structured in certain ways, but I've always sort of eschewed this kind of groovy repetition. Like, it's just wasn't really part of my style. Like, I don't like to improvise on grooves, and I don't like to I don't like to just repeat things over and over. Like, just not my nature. But with this piece, I realized almost by accident that I could use repetition as sort of a foundational idea for all the other things that I like to do, making these explorations with form, making explorations with expectations and twists and turns, but also retaining this kind of groovy quality, and again, like with the grooviness comes like a kind of a dancing feeling, So maybe that's what's different about this piece.
What were rehearsals like? It seems just listening to it, you're on the edge of, oh, got to take it again because someone miscounted that measure, or it wasn't like the last time you did that.
Yeah.
It's hair raising.
Yeah, that's how it feels in rehearsal. I mean, when we originally rehearsed it, it was a little bit scary, but I have some intrepid colleagues that I absolutely adore, and I love these guys, and they were just so motivated to get it right, and they're able to do it. I mean, what rehearsals were like was I basically went with what the other folks in the band needed to do, because I mostly know how to play it myself because I wrote it, but the question is really how to make it, how to make everyone like fit together. I mean, the easy part of the piece is that so much of it is in unison, and that again is another unusual feature of my well, I don't want to say it's unusual, but it's playing in unison is fun, and it makes it somewhat easier. But then I play with that notion of unison by like, well, I'll be playing unison, and then half the band will just like fall ever so slightly behind in this kind of, or go ahead and things, so the question is just knowing when you're together and when you're not together. And I think that was a lot of the rehearsal process, and also just getting used to the kind of mental state you need to be in of like increased focus and relaxation, and just trust, like knowing that we could make a little mistake but then come back together.
Do you think this work has opened the doors to future kind of directions for you? Could you imagine doing this on a larger scale even?
I think this piece definitely opened some doors for me musically. Just the questions are mostly practical. Like, how am I going to get the band together? Like, where are we going to rehearse? When are we going to rehearse? How can we find time or money or a place to perform? But I have so many ideas for how I could take this band and this particular piece and then expand it into something bigger, or like combine it with another ensemble. I have some devious ideas already about how to make larger projects, and also to do this kind of music but reincorporate improvisation into it. And I think there's just so many things that could be done when there's time.
We know you're full of ideas, some of them devious, and there's time ahead of you, so we wait with bated breath. Thank you very much for talking to us.
You're very welcome.